विधिमंडळ सुप्रीम कोर्टाचा निर्णय नाकारू शकत नाही असं महत्त्वपूर्ण मत एका कार्यक्रमादरम्यान सरन्यायाधीश चंद्रचूड यांनी व्यक्त केलंय. न्यायालयाच्या निर्णयावर कायदेमंडळ काय करू शकतं आणि काय करू शकत नाही याबाबत लक्ष्मण रेषा निश्चित केली आहे. संसद न्यायालयातील निवाड्यातील उणिवा दूर करण्यासाठी नवा कायदा करू शकतं. मात्र विधिमंडळ सर्वोच्च न्यायालयाचा किंवा कोणत्याही न्यायालयाचा निर्णय नाकारू शकत नाही असं परखड मत सर्वोच्च न्यायालयाचे न्यायाधीश डी वाय चंद्रचूड यांनी दिल्लीतल्या कार्यक्रमात व्यक्त केलंय. न्यायाधीश चंद्रचूड यांनी केलेल्या भाष्यामुळे महाराष्ट्रातील आमदार अपात्रतेच्या विषयाला विशेष असं महत्त्व प्राप्त झालेलं आहे. कार्यक्रमात बोलताना सरन्यायाधीश चंद्रचूड यांनी आपल्या रोखठोक शैलीत अनेक विषयांवर स्पष्ट शब्दात भाष्य केलं. आताच्या घडीला महाराष्ट्रातला सत्ता संघर्ष, शिवसेना आणि राष्ट्रवादी काँग्रेसचे आमदार अपात्रता प्रकरण, शिवसेनेसह राष्ट्रवादी काँग्रेस पक्ष आणि पक्षचिन्ह याबाबत सर्वोच्च न्यायालयात महत्त्वाच्या याचिकावर सुनावणी झाली. एकंदरीत महाराष्ट्राच्या राजकीय सत्ता संघर्षाच्या पार्श्वभूमीवर सरन्यायाधीश चंद्रचूड यांनी केलेलं विधान अतिशय महत्त्वाचं मानलं जात आहे.
I've been witnessing a pattern recently that as soon as the court decides a particular case in a certain way, a law quickly follows it to tacitly overrule that mandate.
I'm sorry?
As soon as the court decides a particular case, there is a law that quickly follows to overrule the mandate of that judgment. So how does that play out when we talk about the separation of power vis-a-vis the role and the duty of the court as being the final arbiter?
Well, let me make it very, I'll try and answer this question not as a lawyer or as a judge, but just very simply for everyone to understand, because so many of the audience wouldn't be lawyers and judges here. There is a dividing line between what the legislature can do and what the legislature cannot do when there is a judgment of the court. If there's a judgment of a court which decides a particular issue, and that judgment points out, say, a deficiency in the law, it is always open to the legislature to enact a fresh law to cure the deficiency. What the legislature cannot do is to say that we think that this judgment is wrong and therefore we overrule the judgment. A judgment of a court cannot be directly overruled by the legislature, but if, and by the legislature I mean the state legislatures as well as parliament, but if a judge or a judgment takes a particular view of a legislation, it is always open to the legislature to cure the defect. And this is not happening now, recently for the first time. It happened the first time around, I mean, I might be wrong about the first time, but it happened even in 1951 when the Supreme Court of India held that the provisions for reservation in our constitution, the Champakam Dorarajan case, that the provisions for reservation in India would not extend to reservation in educational institutions. Therefore, Parliament then came in and amended the Constitution to provide for reservations in educational institutions. It's been happening constantly in the tax arena. For instance, when we rule on a particular, say, the validity of a tax, let me give you a very simple example of how it happens. Suppose a tax is challenged, the validity of a tax is challenged on the ground that the state legislature was not competent to impose the tax, but only Parliament can impose the tax. All right? Therefore, the tax is struck down by the Supreme Court or by the High Court. Parliament can then say, all right, the Supreme Court has said that we are competent to impose the tax. We will reenact the law and now this time impose the tax as a tax imposed by Parliament and will legitimize the collection of revenue by the states. That is perfectly open to it because validating acts, we call them in law validating acts, these are perfectly permissible. What the court has done and which cannot be undone by the legislature is to directly overrule a judgment. That is completely impermissible.